Here's my Christmas present. I have too many guitars, said nobody ever. Indeed, that's true. So what have we got this time? This time we have a Taylor acoustic, a baby, so a short scale, little half-size guy. And what we're going to do is give it some love, because unfortunately it's been kicked over or something, so some child has attacked it, who knows what, and yes, the headstock is busted. A world of pain. It's a dovetail joint and it looks pretty clean, so we should be able to glue it back on. So we'll do that and we'll fix up a bunch of other stuff, give it some new strings, give it a new nut. So let's get started. So as I said, it's a Taylor acoustic. Nice little thing, a half size. You've already popped out the nut and taken the strings off. It's got a kind of strange way that the neck is attached, just with two screws. Makes it kind of a bit waggly, I'd say, but I guess when the string tension's on, it pulls it square. It's a baby model 301 GB. Bridge looks okay, not going to mess with that. But what we do have here is some kind of worn off lacquer where your pick guard should be, but there is no pick guard, so I'm going to try and fill that in with some lacquer. So it's down to the bare wood there, we don't like that. Frets, just a bit dirty, not really divotty, just a bit dirty, so we'll clean those up. A bit of DNA on the fingerboard, of course, so we'll clean that off. Make it all nice. Put some of this stuff on there, condition the fretboard. But our biggest problem was at the top of the neck here, so it looked like it took a tumble or something. Maybe one of my buddy Pete's kids had kicked it over, but this dovetail joint was busted. So we've already managed to, well actually I let him pull it into two pieces, I was too scared. But it came off in his hand, and then we got the wood glue out, put some wood glue on both sides there, and then tied a piece of string around the bottom two tuners and around onto the strap button there in lieu of a clamp, because I had no better way to clamp it, and it seems to be pretty good. So I've already cleaned up a bit of the excess glue. One little bit of wood broke out there, managed to glue it back on, but it's sitting a bit proud, so we're going to have to sand that down a little and just clean this stuff up. I'm a bit worried that whatever the stain or lacquer is going to kind of come off, but it does have a kind of sticky feel to it, kind of like one of those plastic items, electronic items, where after about 10 or 15 years it goes all gooey and sticky. It's kind of like that, and I don't know if it's the finish or the lacquer or just goo from people's hands, so we're going to try and clean that up as well, make this shiny and less sticky. Okay, so that's our job. First of all, it's going to be clean up this area here, make it all nice and smooth and shiny again. So that's now cleaned up with a bit of 400 grit sandpaper. It's a lot smoother now. Try and focus. This little chunk here isn't sticking out anymore. Now on the other side we've cleaned off the excess glue and it made it nice and smooth. So now I'm just going to go at it with some higher grits of sandpaper till it's really nice and smooth and beautiful, and then we'll address this sticky neck and see if that sticky stuff will come off with just some lighter fluid first, and if not I'll sand it down a little and then reapply some finish to it. Probably just use the Crimson Guitars oil finish. Hopefully it doesn't take too much of the colour away. Let's see how that goes. Now here's the neck all sanded down. So started off with 120 grit to get this nasty gooey stuff off there, and then all the way down to 1000, and now it's all smooth and it's not sticky anymore. Looks like most of the finish has survived. The colour's all still there. Some slightly more bare patches here, obviously, where I had to work a bit harder. But with the finishing oil, that's going to come up beautiful and all look nice and smooth and great. Next job, do something about this where the lacquer's been worn out. So a bit of nail polish style lacquer on there, and sand it down smooth again should do the job. And hopefully it doesn't make it worse. Let's try that. Okay, there's the lacquer over that bare patch. And we'll probably give the whole front of the body there a good little rub down with some very fine grit sandpaper, and then a bit of buffing compound maybe. Make it all shiny again. Now onto the fretboard and the frets. So first I'm going to polish up these frets. I think just a bit of fine grit sandpaper, 1000 grit. And then the polishing compound, the diamond polishing brass metal polish stuff I've got will do a good job of that. And then I can clean up the fretboard, get that DNA off, and give it some oil. Here's what we're going to use for that. This fret guard here goes over the frets. So I start polishing the fretboard. Then I've got some very fine grit sandpaper here, 1200 grit. So I'll be able to take off any that kind of tarnishy stuff that's on there. Maybe you can just about see the tarnishy stripes. Then I'll polish it up with the diamond polish. So that's the top layer of tarnishy stuff off those frets. Kind of hard to see in the video, but they're already shinier. Now we're going to attack it with this stuff. A metal polish, it's actually diamond paste. Nice soft cloth, a bit of cloth for every fret. Little dab of polish, work our way down, and it should shine like the sun. Now we have some super shiny frets. It's hard to get a video of that, but they're super lovely and shiny. It doesn't look like there's really any fret munch, as I said before. I'm not going to go through the whole leveling crowning business because it really doesn't need it. Looks fine. And I guess we'll see when we get the new nut on, which we'll come to in a second, and some strings on, and see whether the truss rod worked, which is down in there. It's a funny hex wrench situation. Not a hex wrench, like a socket, in fact, like a normal nut. We'll see if that works. Should be fine. Now, time to clean all that residual goo off and condition the fretboard at the same time. It goes like this. So this stuff can go on pretty, not too thick, and I'll just give it a minute to sit, not very long. Just chance to dissolve the goo, the DNA from people's fingers, and get rid of any of that paste which I was using for polishing, and wipe it all off. Maybe do it briefly a second time. Okay, fretboard all cleaned and polished. Looking lovely now. No more DNA, no shiny frets. Super duper. This thing is drying. It's going to be okay, I think. I'm going to have to polish it out a bit to make the body as shiny as that bit there. That's okay. Polishing is good. Okay, what else is there left to do? Just going to need the strings, I think. One thing that we have here is that this thing was all messed up. The nut was pretty destroyed. It seemed to have like bits of metal stuck in it, so that wasn't going back in. So instead we got this guy. I hope I've got the right one. It should be the one that fits on this little Taylor. So I guess we'll find out if it does. A little side note here. I bought this on Amazon, but in fact it came from a local shop. Anyone who's local might recognise the labels, but I'm not going to shame them. And I think I paid €10 plus $2.50 shipping, but actually in the shop it was only €9. So if I'd got a tram up there and back, I might have saved myself $1. Not really worth it, but I think it's a bit cheeky having things online $1 more than they are in the shop. But there it is. It looks like I hit the jackpot. This thing's pretty much the right size, just a hair too wide, but it's supposed to be. You're supposed to sand it down to size. Goes in fine. The only problem is that the slot is full of goo and it doesn't want to sit in there nice, so we're going to have to clean all of that old glue out first. How am I going to do that? I think I'll use a file. So here's an old file that my dad gave me. probably as old as he is. But what I've done is made one side nice and flat, so I can use that as a fret end dressing file, so I don't scratch up the fretboard too much. Focus issues. And the other three sides are still milled, so I can do so right there. So I can use the side I don't want to scratch away there, probably this side, and just get rid of that glue, not causing too much wood to be removed. Let's give that a go. So I've got a much cleaner nut slot now. Not perfectly clean, but it's flat without any lumps of stuff. Here's the old nut and the new nut for comparison, and maybe you can see some weird junk down in the old nut there. It looks like a piece of metal even, sort of shiny and weird. I don't know what that is, and it's kind of busted up as well. You can see the new nuts obviously aren't nicer, and it's just very slightly wider. That's okay. One thing to notice is that the old nut has a bit of a different angle on the bottom. Why? Well, that's the shape of the nut slot, in fact, so I'm going to have to file away a little bit of this side along here just to make that angle right, because what you can see is when this guy goes in, it doesn't quite sit just so. It wants to wiggle, it wants to sit here, but it also wants to sit there. So I'm just going to make that the right shape on the bottom, and then it'll sit nice and tight all the way around. We want the nut to contact wood or in as many places as possible, so it transmits the vibrations of the strings into the body, properly down the neck. This is no good. I'm going to have to sand away just this bottom corner along the edge there. Hope I don't gooch it. So here's my new lovely fret rocker from Crimson Guitars. The one I got from China wasn't flat. This one is. Should have bought this the first time. So I found a couple of high frets. Of course I should have fixed that before I polished everything, but I think I can just knock them down with a hammer. The fret hammer should sort them out probably. It's an acoustic, the action's fairly high, should be fine. They're not super high. What I want to do now is add the first layer of the finishing oil. So here's the penetrating finishing oil. So it's like a linseed oil type stuff that cures and sets hard. And we'll make that neck look all beautiful again. There's some patches where more finish was removed than others, but it'll all soak in and look beautiful at the end, I'm very sure. If not, I can just sand it back and do it again. So this stuff goes on with a paper towel, and then the paper towel goes in a bucket of water, because when this stuff dries it heats up, and I don't want to burn the house down. So there's the first layer of the finishing oil. Mostly we're concerned about the neck, and as you can see, it looks very nice already. Got to give it a couple of minutes to start setting, and then give it a rub down. And while I was there, I put them on the back too, because I could. Probably makes it look good. Shines it up a bit. Okay, back in a few minutes to rub it down, and then I'll probably do another coat tomorrow. Okay, a couple of days later, and we're back with this little Taylor baby. So what I managed to do is get this this new tusk nut installed. I had to file away a reasonable amount from the back there to make it fit. Also it fits at a little angle, so I had to get that right. And the action's now pretty good with the top fret there, but it's still just a tiny bit high, so I think what I'm going to do is not sand any more away, but actually file the slots down a little, because actually there's a bit of a difference from this side to that side. So I'll just file the individual slots down until I like the shape of the action. What we do know is that I've also filed down the bridge, the back side of the bridge a lot. Now it's not really sticking out of the guitar too much, and I can't really take too much more off that. But the action of the 12th fret, which we measure with this ruler gauge here, I'm aiming for something like 2 or slightly over 2 millimeters would be good at the 12th fret. But what I'm getting is a bit more than 3 on the low E string and just less than 3 on the high E string. So that's still high, and the problem is that, as a lot of acoustic guitars do, the tension of the strings pulls up on the bridge here and actually pulls the wood of the body up, and then the action gets high. You can't really shim the neck on this kind of construction, so that's not going to work to decrease the action. So we're kind of stuck with what we've got really. It's going to be playable, it's just going to be a bit high. But it is what it is. This patch here where I tried to fix the finish a little, where the varnish had worn through and the bare wood was starting to come out. Also, area here where your arm goes over. I filled those in with some lacquer. It's actually just nail polish. And we're going to put a bit more down here because it's still a bit holy and lumpy there. This side is now fine. I've also cleaned and polished a little bit the top face here, and we're finished with, put a bit of finishing oil, 2 coats on the back here, and the neck has had 3 or 4 coats of finishing oil and rubbed off smooth, so that's now in good shape, much smoother, not sticky anymore like it was before. Nice and playable. And now our neck joint, almost as good as new. That was busted. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is sort these little nuts out. I'm going to glue the nut in with 2 little tiny drops of super glue so we can get it out again later. And this end of the guitar, nothing much I can do. I'm just going to put a bit more lacquer in there. The other thing I forgot to mention was setting the truss rod. So the truss rod nut is down in there. It's actually a real hexagonal nut. It's not a one of these. Doesn't take one of those, takes a real socket. But as it turns out, when I've measured the action by putting the capo, sorry, not the action, the neck relief. Capo on here, fret on the body, and use the feeler gauges. These are just automotive feeler gauges. And I'm looking for about 0.2 millimeters would be good. That would be a nice amount of relief, maybe 0.25 at a push. Checking down here, about halfway along. That's actually fine. So I haven't touched the truss rod at all because I think it's actually pretty good. It's quite low. So we'll see if it buzzes like that when I finally finish the nut at this end, because that will affect the action when we're actually playing it a little bit. Okay, so let's sort that nut out up at the top end. So what's happening now is I'm filing down these nut slots. It looks a bit scary because the holes are kind of big, but that's not a problem because they're small as the string at the bottom. It's just the shape of the files. They get wider as they go up, or I can use these things which don't actually work so good. They're for cleaning welders or something, but they don't seem to work on this tush nut very well. So I'm using these diamond files. And what I'll do, well, you can see already the 3 on the left are already cut down and they're much closer down to the fretboard, and those 3 haven't been done yet. So you see it's quite a lot, but what I'm going to do after I'm done is actually smooth off the top of the nut there so it's not sticking up as high anyway, and so it won't get in the way of your hand when you're playing it, not as much anyway. So what we're going for here is that when we fret over the 2nd fret here, then we just see how much space there is between the fret and the string. You can just see now there's just a tiny little space. That's what we want, just so there's enough space that it's not going to catch, not going to buzz when the strings are open, but the action is nice and low, so when you're playing you don't have to work so hard. That's called the action at the 1st fret, or the action of the nut. Okay, just 2 more to do. So you better close your eyes if you don't like horror movies. Here's the beautiful slot that the tush nut came with, which I'm not really going to use because I'm going to do it like this instead, and it's going to get much bigger and look really horrible. The important thing here is to make sure I file at an angle like this, not flat like that, because especially if I use this tool, the highest point of the nut isn't going to be at the edge here where I want it, but rather back here somewhere. So I've got to make sure that there's a drop off and that the string is really balancing right on the end of the nut slot right there, not somewhere back in here. Okay, so here goes. A bit frightening. See how much we got there. Is it enough? No, not yet. Got a bit more to go. Okay, now we can test it. Pop the string back on. Turn the tuner back on. Tune it back up to pitch. That's enough, and now we can check again. Put it down here. How much space have we got? I need to take off a little bit more. Okay, so I'll make it just the same as this one here. Just a tiny little bit of clearance there. This one's still too high. This one, miles too high. So here's the nut with the slots cut in it, down to the correct depth. Now I need to tidy up because all of this stuff is way too high now. I need to make these slots such that the strings kind of, at least on the high strings, that they'd sit in a little, but these strings should be kind of sitting half in, half out of the slots, not buried deep inside there. And so I've got to tidy up all of these burrs and file it down or sand it down so it's a bit thinner, so also your hand doesn't catch on it as much, make it nicer to play. So we're going to use sandpaper, and I'm just going to sand it down nice with 120 grit sandpaper. That should be 120, it is. So I'll take some of this stuff. Got a smaller piece, and I'll just literally sand the tops off, get rid of the burrs, make it nice and round, make it nice and smooth, make the edges, the corners here nice so they don't catch your hands as well, and just basically tidy things up, make it more beautiful. Here it goes. It's going to take a little while, I'm not going to film the whole thing. And I probably need to see what I'm doing. Be a bit careful. Okay. So sandpaper didn't really cut it, so we got out the big file, and then the little file, and then the 120 grit sandpaper, and we got down to that. So that's good now. The strings kind of sit where you would like them to sit. Kind of half in, half out. Super, super. And because I only finished polishing it with 120 grit, it's a little bit rough still, so I'm going to finish it off with some 240, and it should be pretty smooth. Maybe I'll go up to 600 or something and make it all shiny. And here we have the finished nut. It's polished up, the slots are cut to the right depth, it'll over focus, it's cleaned up, it's moved up from that side, doesn't feel rough, it's got nice round edges, shouldn't grab your hand. And now we should have a much better playing feel. Let's string it back up, tune it up, and see how it plays. Okay, here we are finished. So all the strings in the right places. In tune, we've got a nice action here. Just a tiny bit of clearance. In any case, the action is really high at this end, so it's making the action even higher at this end. So there's no chance of any string buzz there, even if I made that really pretty low. That's the way it's going to have to be, because this end of the guitar is pulled up. Often happens with acoustic guitars, as I said earlier. So that's why the action really can't get much lower unless I take even more off this bridge, but there's really not a lot left to go. If I take too much off there, then there'll be no break over the bridge, and it won't stay in tune or won't behave itself at all. So that's about as good as it's going to get. We'll leave it overnight, see how it feels in the morning. And while that happens, I'm trying to get a bit more lacquer just on this patch here. You can see where I put some more lacquer on there, but some of it's just kind of soaked into the wood, so I'm going to have a little second go in there, because I guess that's where you put your fingers when you're strumming. And it wears the lacquer out there, same as it does on this top corner. I'll just put a bit more there. You can see that patch. Just need to reinforce it a bit. Then it should be good for a while.